Welcome back, everyone. We're going to be solving LeetCode 350, intersection of two arrays 2. So we're given two integer arrays called nums1 and nums2. We want to return an array of their intersection. Each element in the result must appear as many times as it shows in both arrays, and we may return the result in any order. So let's take a look at example 1. We're given 1, 2, 2, and 1, and 2 and 2. So the output is an array containing two 2's. And in this case, that is because nums1 and nums2 both contain two 2's. So how can we solve this? We know we're going to have an output array, so let's get that real quick. Okay, now we can solve this using some sort of mapping where the values in our array are going to be mapped to the counts of how many times that value occurs in our array. So let's import counter from collections. Right, and then let's check to see which of our given input arrays is longer than the other, because we don't want to have to create a mapping for both of our arrays, right? We want to save on some space. So we'll say if the length of nums1 is greater than or equal to the length of nums2, we will do something. Otherwise, if the length of nums2 is greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to the length of nums1, we will do something. And then at the end of this, we're going to return our resulting array. So if the length of nums1 is longer than the length of nums2, then we want to create a mapping of nums2. So we'll say our mapping is going to be the counter of nums2. And then what we want to do is loop through nums1. So we'll say for num in nums1, what do we want to do? We want to find out how many elements of the certain number that we are at, how many elements are in the counter, and then however many there are in that counter, we're going to add on to our resulting array. This is why we're checking which array is shorter and using the counter, because in example 1's case, we would have a counter containing 1 with the key 1 with the value of 2 and the key 2 with the value of 2, and the counter for nums2 would just have the key 2 with the value of 2. So we would use this one and loop through until the value of the key 2 is 0. So we'll say for num and nums1, if that number is in our mapping, and mapping of that number is not equal to 0, that means we can append that element onto our resulting array. So we'll say res.append the number, and then we will decrement our counter by 1 at that specific number and continue on. Okay, so now that is the case for if the length of nums2 is less than or equal to 1. Now let's handle the case for when nums1, the length of nums1 is less than or equal to nums2, and it's going to be the exact same thing as the one above, and we are just going to swap nums2 and our counter to be nums1, and then we will loop through the longer array. And now we can, that should be it. We should just be able to run this. Okay, we passed both test cases. We'll submit, and it does run. Perfect. So what is the space complexity of this problem? The space complexity is going to be bound to our mapping. Depending on which one we run, it's going to be bound to our mapping plus the length of our resulting array. So it is going to be O of res.length plus our mapping dot length. Now the time complexity is going to be, right, depending on whichever block we execute, this creating a mapping is always going to be O of n, and then looping through our longer array, that will be O of n as well. So our time complexity is going to be O of n plus m, where n is creating our mapping and m is how many times we have to loop through our array. All right, that'll do it for LeetCode 350.